Like all of us, I am shocked and sickened by the horrific events that transpired on Sunday night in Las Vegas. Shocked but not surprised, in a nation in which military-style weapons of wanton violence and death are sold as sporting goods and nearly as accessible. And though I, like so many of us, first seek solace in prayers and moments of reverent silence, even these authentic gestures, no matter how well-intentioned, feel hollow, redundant, and futile. The time for prayer is long over, the time for action long overdue. Here's a Rabcast I shared 4 years ago in the aftermath of another mass shooting in the season of Sukkot. These abominations occur so frequently that they are now linked to all seasons and milestones. Let us work to ensure that not another Sukkot will pass without common-sense gun reform that removes weapons of war from our streets, schools, and homes. Welcome to Rabcast. I'm Daniel Weiner. As the tragic events unfolded this week in Washington, D.C., with grief and anger matched only by frustration at the futility of it all, Pete Seeger's words echoed in my mind. When will they ever learn? There's no vindication, no satisfaction in raging at the world, I told you so. There's only the silence of the dead and the sadness of the survivor struggling to find comfort in a world bent on insanity, classically defined as doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results. Even in the face of yet another massacre, there is still some reason to celebrate. The festival of Sukkot brings lightness and gratitude to our annual cycle, offering timely balance to the somber self-assessment of Yom Kippur. And as our tradition does so well, the ritual as role play, rooted in a compelling sacred story, conveys powerful metaphors and potent lessons relevant to any age. Recounting the tale of our wilderness journey while dining and, for the more rustic, sleeping in the sukkah, teaches us that, just as it was way back when, we need to place ultimate faith in values, principles, and ideals, as well as their source, more than in the fleeting comforts of the material. Sukkot is, above all, an exercise in faith. But for Jews, this is a subtle, complex faith. In the desert, vulnerable to a host of threats and utterly dependent upon God's grace and goodness to survive, our ancestors still needed to act on their own behalf. The fragile, ramshackle sukkah provided modest shelter, but it represented a determined, real effort to create. As partners in the recently reaffirmed covenant at Sinai, God could provide some support, but the people needed to meet God halfway. It is trite to invoke the axiom that God helps those who help themselves, but the trite is often true. The Israelites had faith in something greater than themselves to achieve the improbable, a journey from abject servitude to morally grounded freedom. But that faith was founded upon a more basic, essential faith in themselves, and a faith in what they had yet to realize. Our continuing national nightmare of ongoing gun violence, growing from our lust for high-powered weapons and negligence of the needs of the mentally ill, is neither inevitable nor intractable. It is a question of wisdom and will. The wisdom to admit our errors in placing the profits of the firearms industry over sensible social policy, as well as our decades-long ignorance of a growing mental health crisis. And the will to confront the avaricious influence of the gun lobby and political leaders who have never met a social program for the poor and disenfranchised that they didn't want to gut and leave dead on the side of the road. but we've got to start somewhere. Here in Washington State, we are continuing to make the kinds of strides against the national tide of paralysis and mean-spiritedness for which we have become renowned. The work of the Washington Alliance for Gun Responsibility toward getting Initiative 594 on the ballot is a local, effective way of combating the metastasizing cancer of unchecked gun violence. Universal background checks are not a panacea, but they are a genuine start. Coupled with a reevaluation of our virtually non-existent mental health care system, we can begin the long, slow process towards stemming the tide of these savage attacks. It will require a superhuman effort, perhaps even a faith in divine providence. But as it was for our sainted, sandy ancestors in the wilderness, God provides for those who strive for themselves. Before their 40-year campout, the Israelites stood on the shores of the Red Sea, with the expansive deep before them and Pharaoh's army bearing down behind. Moses extended his magic staff to part the waters, to no avail. It is only when the maverick, Nachshon, took the first step into the waves that God parted the waters. It was only when the people had enough faith in themselves to take the initiative that God rewarded that faith with a miracle. May we too see our convictions and our efforts rewarded and amplified by responses to tragedy that glimmer with the miraculous. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.